ever wondered what started the feminist movement, why kids are so smart-mouthed these days, or why we don't seem to have any heroes anymore?
Sound like Andy Rooney.
Joshua Meyerowitz has written a book with the answers to some of those questions, and we'll be talking with him next about TV on Take Two.
Catch up with all the scores, highlights, and insights on CNN Sports Tonight. Join Nick Charles and Jim Huber every night of the week at 11:30 Eastern.
I witnessed the incredible, experienced the wonderful.
Experience Sports Tonight every night of the week.
Experience live on CNN.
Now back to Take Two on CNN.
Like it or not, for better or for worse, television is now an integral, if not dominant, part of our lives. Media guru Marshall McLuhan predicted the dynamic impact that TV would have, but he never really explained how the tube would change the way we live, and more to the point, how we relate to each other. And Professor Joshua Meyerowitz has taken that next step with his No Sense of Place, a book about the impact of the electronic media on social behavior. And to give you an idea of what we are talking about here, we're going to conduct a little experiment, so do not adjust your set. Welcome, Professor. How has TV changed written communication, for example?
Well, television has led to a new focus on image rather than on words, and I think we're seeing as a result of that, even in print media, magazines and so forth that focus on image, such as People magazine.
Yeah, and as you point out, that before people would just read the words of a writer, really had no idea of what he was like.
That's true, that when you read someone's words, you tend to focus on the ideas there and the expression of them. When you write something, you can, in a sense, become anyone you want to become. You can create a character, you can create a tone, you can create a voice for yourself. However, when you're on television, you're kind of stuck with your own face and your own voice, and you can appear that much different from the way that you actually appear. And on TV, people tend to focus on the image. When you hear people watch a debate on television, they don't usually say, is this true or is this false, or that's a good argument. They tend to say things such as, I like him, or I don't like her, or she's tough, or she's very emotional, or look how he's sweating, or look how nervous he is. We tend to respond more on an emotional, personal dimension.
Well, as you say, we're all living in a 19-inch neighborhood now. How has TV changed our sense of where we fit in?
Television has eliminated many social barriers by lifting the veils of secrecy between children and adults, between men and women, and between politicians and average citizens.
Okay, let's focus on those three main areas.
Sure.
First of all, parents and kids. How has that changed?
Well, we used to think of childhood as a time of innocence and a time of isolation. There were many secrets we kept from children, things such as birth, death, sex, money, abortion, drugs, suicide. Even the fact that adults and parents don't always know what to do about children. These were all secrets that children were sheltered from, and they never knew about these things.
And then shows like Father Knows Best, and kids learn that parents do indeed have secrets.
Yes, the interesting thing I think about Father Knows Best is that we tend to think of it as a very innocent show that had no effect on children because the children in the show were so innocent. But the children watching the program saw something that they did not learn through their early books that were written for them, and that was that parents played roles for children, that parents pretended to be all-knowing when they were in front of their children. But when they were by themselves and alone, they displayed their doubts and their fears and their anxieties. And they always spoke about what to do with the kids. And so I think that the children watching Father Knows Best tended to become more suspicious of parents and adults in general when they found out that adults don't always do in public what they say and think in private.
And is that somehow linked to what happened in the 60s, the 60s generation?
I think that it's no wonder that the generation that grew up watching Father Knows Best and Leave It to Beaver, even with the seemingly innocent content there, was very concerned with the credibility gap, with a concern about what people do privately and what they say and do publicly, and was concerned with bringing that into balance.
All right, and you also say in some way, I think this will fascinate a lot of viewers, that the I Love Lucy show was really, I guess, a setting stage for the feminist movement.
Yes, this seems very strange to people that shows with such sexist content, where the sex roles were so clearly defined, could break down the difference between the male world and the female world. But I think that's what I Love Lucy and other television programs have done. We used to think that there were two separate spheres. There was a public male sphere of rational accomplishment and brutal competition, and a private female sphere of home, intuition, and emotion. But television breaks down the differences between the personal and the private, between the male and the female, and it exposes both sexes to very similar information about the world and also about sex roles, which is what was going on in I Love Lucy. Television close-ups also reveal the private, emotional side of public figures and events in news and documentary, just as all public events now have become dramas that are played out in the privacy of our living rooms and kitchens. And so television exposes women to all those parts of the culture that were once considered exclusively male domains. War, politics, and sports, hostage crises, and so forth. And it forces men, I think, to face the emotional consequences of their public actions.
So, in essence, the line separating men and women has become quite blurred, hasn't it?
Yes, I think that women want to be involved now in all those parts of the culture they see on television. Men are more aware of the emotional side of culture. And also, as the sex roles themselves, the old roles, have become discussed on television in front of both men and women, instead of discussed privately, only among men and only among women, as they were in the past, those roles have come to seem phony. And also, once the other person knows about the strategies that you use to interact with them. Once one sex knows about the strategies of the other sex, those strategies tend to become the subject of public discussion, and they tend to become ineffective. And we find ourselves now searching for new gender roles and for a new way of dealing with each other.
I guess that's why they might partially explain all this business about men, whether they're wimps or macho and all that. They don't really know what role to play.
Right, now we find ourselves constantly negotiating over roles that were once assumed.
We're going to do something now I want you to comment on when we come back, but we're going live to the White House to bring you the selection of the teacher to ride on the next shuttle mission.
A wise man once said, some succeed by what they know, some by what they do, and few by what they are.
And the almost sounded like a Miss America contest, didn't it? The first runner-up and all that. The backup is Barbara Morgan, McCall Donnelly Elementary School of McCall, Idaho. Well, let's continue our discussion now on television with Professor Meyerowitz. What did you make of all that?
Well, I think it was interesting how here we were watching one of the highest political leaders in our country, the Vice President, and how we were watching him live. And I counted about 5 mistakes that were made in this ceremony because it was live. And I think that what's happened in the political realm with our presidents and our vice presidents is that now we watch them so closely and so consistently, often in live performances, that they don't seem to be very special anymore. It's hard for us to imagine that as late as the Eisenhower administration, the New York Times could not quote a president without his permission. And many presidents refused to speak to any reporters and refused to answer questions and refused to allow reporters to even report on the questions they refused to answer. So we had a great distance, we had great mystery surrounding our politicians. Now in live performances, politicians are seen either reading haltingly from a piece of paper, as we saw George Bush, making a mistake, journal, or we see them in live performances where they often have to start a sentence before they even know what the end of the sentence is going to be. And so in recent years, we've seen our presidents stumble, we've seen them collapse while jogging, we've seen them sleeping during an audience with the Pope.
Is that necessarily bad? I mean, that does sort of reduce them more to human nature. Is that bad necessarily?
Well, I'm not sure that any of these changes are bad, but they certainly are very different. What's happened is that we have a blending of once very different roles. We see more adult-like children, more child-like adults, more aggressive women, more gentle men, and we see political leaders being lowered to the level of the average person.
Does that account for a lack of heroes we have today, maybe?
Yes, because heroism and great leadership depends on distance and mystery. You have to not be too close to people. There's a saying that no man is a hero to his valet. And in a sense, television has made us valets to all of our political leaders. We watch them so closely and so carefully that we see them now more as average citizens.
Professor, I want to get your thoughts in the time remaining here. You may have heard about this new videotape that is being sold in some stores around the country. It is called The Face of Death. and it portrays real killings of animals and human beings in suicide cases, and it is a so-called documentary, but it is said to be one of the fastest-selling tapes, video cassettes that can be bought and played at home, that has occurred recently. Have we become totally desensitized now? We've seen so much on television, assassinations. You haven't. Is it necessary now that people have to go out and buy a tape like that in order to see the real thing? What's happening here?
Well, I think that what's happening is that we have lost the sense of the relationship between where we are and what we know and experience. And television and other electronic media plug us into things that are happening in very different places. And somehow I think we have the sense now that we should be able to experience wherever we are things that have happened elsewhere, whether it's a famine in Africa or a live ceremony in Washington or news that's happening in any part of the world. And I think that the idea that we should have arbitrary barriers or things that stop us from experiencing things have broken down. And I think sometimes this gets carried away, as in the case of this tape, where people want to experience anything that has happened, whether it's Madonna posing in the nude 7 years ago.
Nothing is taboo anymore, is it?
It's hard to find taboos these days, because the idea of taboo was it was something that some people knew, but they weren't quite sure what other people knew about, and so people would give each other what I call the benefit of potential ignorance. That is, men would not bring up certain topics with women because they weren't quite sure what the women knew about, and vice versa. Same thing with children and adults. But now television and other electronic media have exposed all these topics to us, and they also tend to expose it publicly and simultaneously. You're sitting in the room with your whole family and you hear about these things, or see famines in Africa, or fires in California, or death, or murder, or abortion and suicide. And now it seems almost strange not to raise these topics over dinner or in mixed company, not only because everybody knows now, but because everybody knows that everybody knows.
And now everybody knows that you know, that I know, that we all know. And I'm sorry, we're out of time, but it's fascinating. We could go on forever with this. Professor Joshua Meyrowitz, the author of No Sense of Place.